they've got to be savvier than that. There's got to be better game management, because that is the moment for me where everything changes. Well, hello again from St James's Park, where they are just over my shoulder beginning to clear away the UEFA and the Champions League branding. Yeah, that won't be a pretty sight for you guys, I know that. When will it be back? Well, let's hope it's not another 20 years like it was since the last time there was Champions League football here. But for me, it should have been back here in a few months' time for the knockout rounds. And the only place to start really is, how did Newcastle go from a position approaching the hour whereby they were in the last 16 of the Champions League to finishing here tonight on the end of a 2-1 defeat and out of Europe completely? Well, I'll take you inside the press room just 10-15 minutes ago, when we are furiously debating between ourselves what level of criticism can you attach to the last half hour. Now, there are some who say none at all. They would put it down to bad luck, fine margins and fatigue. And yes, there is an element of that, but while I wasn't in the camp of all-out criticism and total naivety, I thought there was an element of it to that. I don't think you can ignore that. There was two performances there tonight. I thought for the first hour they were brave, and I thought they were brilliant, and I thought St James's absolutely rocked. Eddie Howard called for it to be a magical night, and as I've just written in the Daily Mail, you guys, the supporters, you put down your pint glasses and you picked up ones, and for the first hour there, I thought it was tremendous. It was everything we thought it might be. I said in the preview video, walking up and down these walking up and down this exact stretch just 24 hours ago, I was convinced Newcastle would come here and win tonight. And like I said, for that first hour, everything went according to plan in that regard. I thought they were very good, and we'll come back to the reasons as to why. But the key moment, the moment where the game changes, is undoubtedly in the 59th minute. Eddie Howe just said the exact same to us downstairs. Now, for me, if you concede that goal when you're chasing the game, when you're chasing another goal, okay. For Newcastle to concede that goal in a position whereby they are in the last 16 of the Champions League, they are winning 1-0, that is the part I think deserves criticism. I thought it was a really poor goal to concede. Now, it's come from just over my shoulder there, in Milan's left wing position, Newcastle's right back position, and I don't understand why both Tino Livramento and Kieran Trippier are attempting to stop the cross. The cross comes in, okay, there's a little bit of luck, there's some pinball in the area, but it falls to Christian Pulisic in the right wing area. He is unmarked and he puts it in, totally unopposed from 2 or 3 yards out. Now, why has that happened? Well, it's happened because the guy who should have been left back, Tino Livramento, has had to come over to the right, because the guy who was in the right back position, Kieran Trippier, I think, and I probably need to watch this back, is too far upfield. And it wasn't a goal to concede when you should be in control, and Newcastle were in control. Like I said, if that comes at 0-0, okay, they're committing men forward. It's on a transition, yes, but it's 1-0, They've got to be savvier than that. There's got to be better game management, because that is the moment for me where everything changes. Now, what happens after that? Again, 2 or 3 in the press box downstairs, where I think they're probably thinking with their passport, and to a degree I was as well. Do you want them to protect the Europa League position? Well, not for me. I can't attach any fault to Newcastle then pushing, knowing that it's a draw in Dortmund between Dortmund and PSG. It's 1-1. Knowing how that result stands, I've got no quarrel with Newcastle pushing to go and get a second goal and then take them into the last 16 of the Champions League to regain that lead. But where I do have an issue, and where I would criticise, is the nature again of the second goal conceded. Yes, they've committed men forward, but they had a chance to stop Milan's break before that. The player, I think it's Hernandez, I have to watch it back. Hernandez goes between Bruno and Isaac. Now, not only do they not make a challenge, which, okay, it might be beyond you make a challenge, make a foul. Would Milan have fouled Newcastle in that position? Absolutely, yes, they would have done. They would have stopped it there at the expense of a yellow card. Once Hernandez is away, it's then 4-on-3. Newcastle are stretched, and it's a good finish. It's a well-worked goal. It's clinical. Could Dubravka have done better? I don't know, but he doesn't look as big and imposing in his goal as Nick Pope does. Nick Pope is number one for a reason, and that tonight was just a reminder perhaps of how big a gap that perhaps is between the two goalkeepers. That is something I think we may have to revisit in January, and we'll talk about potential incomings and certain Spanish goalkeepers who are currently sat unemployed. Anyway, that's for another day. But the second goal is another bad one to concede, and Milan in the space of 22 minutes have gone from a position whereby they'd been second best for the majority. They're up against a home team who I thought was still in the ascendancy, who had the crowd behind them. Everything was in the favour of Newcastle, and 20 or so minutes later they're bottom of the group, and Milan have somehow found themselves in a winning position. Now, does this speak to just a night of small margins? If Bruno's shot goes in at 1-1, of course it's tipped onto the bar. I think Newcastle do go on to win the game, but nonetheless, I think it also speaks to a wider problem now of Newcastle not seeing out games when they're in control. I know this is more away from home, but they've been in this position once or twice before this season when they've been in a position of seemingly command, and they haven't been able to see out games I think they should have won. Now, does this come back to a midfield issue? Does this take us right back to the very start of the season and the need, as I said at the time, for number 6 in there? As good and as brilliant as Bruno Guimaraes has been this season, especially at home, is he not in games where they need to control and to see out? Is he the player Newcastle need in there? I'm not entirely sure. And if I'm looking back over the course of the Champions League campaign over the 6 matches, I would say it's in midfield where Newcastle have perhaps been shown by Milan, by Dortmund in particular. Their midfield have just shown more savvy and more nous as to how to control a Champions League game, and that there for me tonight is perhaps what it comes back to at times. Now, before that, for the first hour, I thought Newcastle were very good. From the off, there was that intensity and there was that intent. The first goal is absolutely fantastic. A word as well for Fabian Schär. Bruno Guimaraes is in a bit of a sticky position in midfield. Schär makes a really intelligent run, allows Bruno to break the lines between 2 Milan players. From there, the ball goes to Gordon. Anthony Gordon does very well, and it's Lewis Miley, 17-year-old, His performance for the first hour there will probably get lost amid the disappointment of the defeat, but I thought he was very good again, and that lay off the Joe Linton, tees himself up, puts it top corner. It's felt like a magical moment on what for Newcastle was going to be a magical night. I'll take you inside the report. I was right, and everything was geared at that point towards this being another night for the ages, an occasion to remember, a night when it told you why Newcastle's owners should never really think about leaving St James's Park. I think I've probably still come away with that impression, because I have to say I thought tonight St James's, it was a real reminder of it at its very best. Everything the manager, everything the players had asked for, the guys in the stands gave. There was that sense of jeopardy, that sense of emotion. There's no noise quite like it when you get word of a goal from elsewhere. The Dortmund goal, from that, when that rumour becomes reality, and the cheer that goes up. And tonight had everything. It was quite an astonishing night inside the stadium when the game went from end to end and the group went from end to end as well. It was really enjoyable to be. I have to say that I take away from it. I'm going to do an Eddie Howe now. I'm going to go back and watch the game, because on these night games you do at times have your head down a little too often for your liking. But I thought it was enjoyable. I thought it was a brilliant occasion, and it certainly whet the appetite for more. And the frustration is that, for me, I think Newcastle were good enough to come out of this group. I don't think it was a case of them being massively outclassed. I just think at times, you come back to that word, naive. If you reflect on the group stage as a whole, I'd say it was 3 poor performances, 2 good performances coming into tonight, and a performance tonight that was some good and some bad. Primarily split between the first hour and the last half hour. And yes, there is the mitigation of injuries we always talk about, but I'm not having fatigue as an excuse tonight here. I don't think you can go for an hour looking energised and the crowd feeding off the players and the players feeding off the crowd to all of a sudden using tiredness as an excuse. I'm sorry, I just think it was poor decision making and bad game management at times. Now, I know some supporters have questioned the substitutions. On those 2, Trippier and Anthony Gordon came off. We've just spoken to Eddie because they were injured. Trippier had a problem in the first half, said he wanted to carry on. At the second, indicated on the hour that he couldn't, just after Milan's opening goal. Anthony Gordon was the same, a tightness in his hamstring there. The substitution Longstaff for Miley as well, I've got no problem with. I said there Miley was very good. I thought he was very good until the point of Milan's first goal, at which point he was part of what became a pretty ragged team performance, and in particular a ragged midfield performance. So bringing on Longstaff, I had no issue with that. And they were still going for it at the end there. You know, the one goal away from getting it the Europa League. Is it the worst thing that they didn't? Again, am I talking through my passport here and my want to cover more matches and to be away? Perhaps I would obviously have preferred them to have remained in European competition, but some supporters and some of the guys downstairs were saying, you know, it's not the worst thing, bearing in mind how stretched the squad has looked at times, given there aren't the massive financial incentive of the Europa League. So I do get that, and Eddie, come the end of his press conference there, was saying, you know, the pain of tonight they have to use as motivation, as fuel to get back into the Champions League. That has got to be the aim now. I said that even before tonight, before Champions League, Europa League, whatever. The ultimate priority this year had to be, however they did it, was to get back into that top 4, possibly the top 5. That is probably gone now. Manchester United and Newcastle being knocked out of Europe in consecutive nights has damaged the English coefficient. You'd be surprised now, unless one of the English teams went on to win the competition or an all-English final, you'd be surprised now if 5th was enough. So Newcastle, in what looks a really competitive year in the Premier League, have to find a way somehow to get back in the top 4. And do I think they'll do it stood here now? Well, you know what I think of them. I think they've got a brilliant manager. I think they've got a brilliant group, some outstanding players, a wonderful team. But my worry would be, everything I've said just there exists here at St James's Park. Away from home, and I suggested this in the press conference earlier in the week to Eddie, I suggested this on this video, they're two different sides at the moment. Eddie rejected that, but I think they are. I think they've had issues away from home all season, you know, regardless of the injuries. They didn't have injuries down at Brighton when on this video I spoke of an ability in midfield to control games. That went back to the point I made earlier about the absence of a number 6. So I think Newcastle come here on Saturday and they beat Fulham. You can't say they've bounced back. They'll bounce back when they beat, I was going to say when they beat Luton, perhaps that's not the greatest barometer, but they'll bounce back when they win a couple of good games away from home. Now, what emphasis does this put on the League Cup next week down at Chelsea now, in terms of a ridiculous phrase, I know, but come on, just stick with me, saving the season? I think it does now. I think, you know, to keep that positive momentum, that feel good alive, I think it would be a real sickener for the squad going into Christmas if all of a sudden they found themselves out of, you know, Europe and the League Cup, bearing in mind what a wonderful opportunity they have in that. So I think now going down to Chelsea, I think there is that extra little bit of pressure, and if ever they needed it, perhaps even more pressure going into the cup game at Sunderland too. Now, belatedly tonight, we're just going to get round to the merit marks now, and I was doing the ratings tonight for the Daily Mail, and honestly, after an hour, there's 7s, there's 7.5s, there's some 8s in there. That did kind of change. It had to, really, but I still think Newcastle's best player and worthy of the 3 stars was Joe Linton. His goal, I thought he was physical. I thought he nicked things. I thought he broke things up. He was the one midfielder who did what he had to. Really, could he have done more during the final half hour? Perhaps, you know, as I said, you know, I thought to a man really they became really ragged, but I thought Joe Linton was Newcastle's best. 2 stars, reasons I've already spoken about. Louis Miley, 17-year-old. The times in the first half, his link-up play and one-touch passing down the right, I thought was absolutely tremendous. Another really encouraging display that tells us just what a player he is going to be. And the 1 star, and it's a 1 star where I looked back through the ratings and I thought, who does this go to? Because yes, I thought at times Trippier was excellent in the first half, faded. Livramento had a good game first half, but then, you know, he's on the scene for the goals. So it probably goes to Anthony Gordon, and I know he came off after an hour, but I thought in that time, I thought he did some good, did very well for Newcastle's goal. It's a 1 star I give, I must admit, without any great deal of conviction, but it goes to Gordon. Now, where did Newcastle go from here? Well, it's back here. In fact, Fulham, as I've just mentioned there, in a few days' time in the Premier League, in a match they've got to win. You know, it really is feeling like that, especially as well because they're putting even more pressure on the home results and performances on account of what's happening away from home right now. So I've got no doubt that they've, I know I said this 24 hours ago, you're probably telling me to shut up, but I think they will come back here and give a response, because that tonight, and I think they will win, because that tonight wasn't a bad performance. You know, it wasn't one where you've come away like the Dortmund game here at home, where I thought they were poor. I thought for large parts of that there tonight, I thought they were good. I thought there were some good performances, and it is fine margins. You know, that period at the start of the second half when they're on top, there's one or two slight little openings which, if the ball bounces a different way, it could be 2-0. Even the moment leading up to Milan's first goal, Newcastle, it's a promising attack where a little bit of a better pass, and they could be in with Fabian Schär, they could be in for a second goal. So while there is criticism, we'll use that word, of the nature of the conceded goals and the frustration that they're in a position of control and they've surrendered that, it's not an end of the world performance where you're calling too much into question. So yeah, it's up to them to respond now, and they've got another big week coming up, a little trilogy really, Fulham, Chelsea and then Luton just a couple of days before Christmas. And I think you know, could these three, you say, use the phrase, don't you, shape a season? But I think it is a huge week now on the back of this. We'll be looking for a response, and we'll next be speaking to Eddie at the training ground in it's only 36 hours time or so ahead of the game at home to Fulham. So guys, all the links from tonight, the match report, my piece speaking about why St James has reminded us of its worth at a time when potential stadium moves are being discussed, that's in there as well. Please hit like, please hit subscribe as well again, and I'll see you again after Eddie's press conference on Friday. Thanks again for watching, guys. Like I say, an intriguing night, an enjoyable night. I know you guys might not be thinking that now, but yeah, okay, take care, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.